She was already yelling before I even stepped out of my truck. "You can't park here. This is HOA property." I looked around, just trees, a narrow road, and the quiet shimmer of the lake I'd loved since I was a kid. My lake, my land. The old Lakehouse stood behind me, paint peeling, porch leaning, but it was mine now. I'd spent years tracking down the deed, fighting through paperwork just to buy back what my grandfather once owned, but the woman in the floral visor didn't care. She marched toward me with a clipboard like it was a badge. "I'm Karen Thompson, HOA president," she said, voice sharp. "This area is restricted. You'll need to remove that truck and any personal property immediately." I smiled, calm but tired. "Ma'am, this is Lot 47. Private land, not part of your HOA. Her eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. All lakefront property is under our community jurisdiction." She waved a fake-looking document in my face, covered in fancy fonts and a logo that looked like it came off Google Images. "I don't think you understand," she said, smirking. "You'll be receiving an eviction notice by tomorrow morning. You can't just buy your way into our neighborhood." I leaned against the tailgate, studying her like a mosquito that didn't know it was about to get swatted. "You're welcome to try," her voice rose, echoing across the water. "Try? Sir, you're trespassing. I could call the cops right now." That's when I noticed the small group forming near the trail, a few homeowners watching, whispering, enjoying the show. One man even pulled out his phone. Karen clearly loved an audience, so I gave her one. "Call whoever you want," I said quietly. "But before you do, maybe check your property lines first," she blinked. "Excuse me?" I nodded toward the edge of the lake, where a rusted old boundary marker poked from the dirt. "Because everything from that post to the waterline, it's mine. Been in my family since 1923. For the first time, she hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed. But just as fast, she recovered. Fake smile, fake confidence. "We'll see about that," she snapped, spinning on her heel. "Enjoy your little vacation before reality hits you." As she stormed off, I watched her heels crunch the gravel, already planning whatever nonsense came next. I had a feeling this wasn't the last time I'd see her. And if she really wanted to test who owned what around this lake, she was about to learn the hard way. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking, no, banging, on my door. I opened it to find Karen standing there with two men in bright orange safety vests and clipboards. "Told you I'd be back," she said smugly. "These are HOA compliance officers. We're issuing you a removal notice for unauthorized construction." I looked behind her. My truck, a few tools, and a folding chair sat in the yard. "Construction?" I asked, half laughing. "That's my chair, Karen." She crossed her arms. "You're building without a permit. The HOA doesn't allow new docks or structures." I raised an eyebrow. "That dock's been here for a century. Built by my grandfather." "Then it's old and illegal," she shot back. The so-called officers began taking pictures like it was a crime scene. One of them even measured my deck rail. I tried to stay calm. "You do realize none of this belongs to your HOA, right?" Karen smirked. "The law says otherwise, and when the county inspector sees my report, you'll be forced to vacate. You should have cooperated when you had the chance." Her arrogance burned through me, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to lose my temper, not yet. Because the truth was, I had something she didn't know about. While she strutted away, tossing fake warnings over her shoulder, I stepped back inside and opened an old wooden chest near the fireplace. Inside were files, maps, and one folded parchment, aged, yellowed, but perfectly legible. My grandfather's land deed, original seal, signed by the county clerk in 1923, and right across the boundary lines, clear as daylight, was the land her entire HOA was built on. I stared at the map, shaking my head. "Oh, Karen," I muttered. "You really picked the wrong neighbor." A sudden noise outside snapped my attention back. Through the window, I saw one of the men trying to cut the chain on my gate. That's when my patience ended. I stepped outside and shouted, "Touch that chain again and you'll regret it." Karen turned, pretending to be calm, but her voice cracked. "You can't threaten HOA officials." I smirked. "You might want to check their uniforms. Those aren't officials, and I have a feeling you paid them cash." Her eyes flickered with guilt, just for a second. But it was enough. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. "Thanks," I said. That's all I needed. She froze, trying to think fast. You can't use that already sent, I cut in, tapping send on my screen. Straight to the sheriff's office. They still remember my dad. Her face paled. Your dad? Yeah, I said, stepping closer. He was the county sheriff here for 20 years. Her smirk finally disappeared, and for the first time, she looked scared. Karen didn't come back that afternoon, but her friends did. Around sunset, I saw 3 SUVs roll up to the end of my gravel driveway. Men and women in neat clothes stepped out holding folders, cameras, and a sense of authority they hadn't earned. The lead guy, tall with slicked-back hair, gave me a fake smile. Evening, sir, he said smoothly. We're with the Lakeside Homeowners Association. We've had multiple complaints about your property. Complaints? I asked, leaning on my porch rail. I've been here 2 days. He nodded, pretending to read his papers. Noise, debris, unauthorized occupancy. You'll need to vacate until we verify ownership. I could almost hear Karen whispering behind all this. She wasn't dumb, she was hiding, letting her minions do the dirty work. I crossed my arms. I already told your president this land isn't under your HOA. You're trespassing. The man smiled tighter. Sir, our records say otherwise. Your records are wrong, he shrugged. Then you'll have no problem proving it. His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. It was a threat wrapped in politeness. Behind him, one of the ladies lifted her phone and started taking pictures of my house, my yard, even my dog sleeping on the steps. That's when I lost my patience. Stop taking pictures, I said firmly. She ignored me, so I stepped forward, reached out, and blocked her camera lens with my hand. I said stop! She gasped like I'd committed a crime. He assaulted me! She shrieked. Within seconds, the slick-haired guy pulled out his phone. We're calling the police, he said coldly. Perfect. I folded my arms and smiled. Go ahead. They didn't know my cousin was a deputy in this county. He showed up 15 minutes later, lights flashing, gravel flying. Evening, folks, he said, stepping out. What's going on here? Karen's group rushed forward, all shouting at once, fake tears, false claims, wild stories about me attacking them. My cousin looked from them to me, unimpressed. He turned to me. They giving you trouble again, Adam? Yep, I said simply. Trying to evict me from my own land. He sighed, shaking his head. All right, everyone line up. Let's see some ID. That wiped the smiles right off their faces. 2 of them suddenly remembered they had somewhere to be. Karen herself was hiding behind the last SUV, pretending to be on the phone. My cousin walked over to her. Mrs. Thompson, right? She froze. Oh, Deputy, He cut her off. You know this property's not under your HOA. We verified that months ago when you tried to report it as abandoned. Her jaw dropped. You what? He crossed his arms. You're trespassing again. Keep this up and we'll file charges next time. She looked at me, furious, humiliated, but couldn't say a word. As they drove off, my cousin smirked. She's not going to stop, you know? I nodded slowly. I know. He tilted his head. You got a plan? Yeah, I said, glancing back at the old lake house. It's time to show them what's really under their precious HOA. The next morning, fog drifted over the lake like a ghostly curtain. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee, but before I could take a sip, I noticed tire tracks carved deep into the mud near my dock. Someone had been here last night. I followed the trail down the slope and froze. My dock, my grandfather's hand-built dock, was gone. Half of it torn apart, boards floating in the water. Karen had finally gone too far. I felt that slow burn rise in my chest, the kind that doesn't make you yell. It makes you plan. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken last week. The dock, the boundary marker, the deed. Every bit of proof I needed. Then I called the county records office. Morning, this is Adam Walker, I said. I need to confirm a boundary filing from 1923. Lot 47, Lake Hollow. The clerk paused, typing. Oh, interesting. That property line runs about 80 feet into what's now listed as HOA Common Grounds. 80 feet? I asked, smiling. That include any houses? Actually, yes, several. The HOA clubhouse sits right on the edge. I hung up. staring out at the calm lake. So Karen's empire wasn't just built near my land. It was on my land. By the time afternoon rolled around, I'd made my move. I drove into town, straight to the county registrar's office. The clerk recognized my name from my father's days as sheriff. Within an hour, the updated property verification was printed, sealed, and signed. When I returned home, there were already cars lined up near the trail. Karen's voice carried across the lake again. "You can't rebuild without HOA approval," she shouted, storming down my path like she owned it. "Oh, I'm not rebuilding," I said, waving the papers in the air. "I'm just posting a notice," she frowned. "Notice? What notice?" I nailed the sign right into the tree at the edge of my land. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." She laughed mockingly. "That won't stop me." I handed her a copy of the new survey. "You sure about that? Because technically your HOA clubhouse, your dock, and even that picnic area over there are all on my land." Her smirk fell apart in slow motion. No, that can't be." "Oh, it can," I said, stepping closer. "And unless you want your little neighborhood picnic spot gone, I suggest you back off." Her face went pale. She snatched the papers, scanning them with shaking hands. "You're lying." "Call the county," I said simply. "They'll confirm it." For once, she had no comeback. Just pure silence, the sound of the wind, the soft ripple of the lake, and the crash of her perfect illusion breaking apart. As she turned to leave, I added one last line. "Next time you try to evict someone, Karen, make sure your own house isn't sitting on their land." She stopped for a moment, shoulders tense, then walked away without a word. But I could tell by the way she moved. This wasn't over. Not even close, because some people can't stand losing power, especially to the one person they tried to destroy. That night, the storm rolled in fast. Thunder cracked over the lake, lightning flashing across the water, and I could barely hear the rain pounding against the old roof. I was sitting by the fire, reading through the deed again, when a set of headlights suddenly lit up my window. Someone was back. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. A black SUV sat at the edge of my driveway, same one I'd seen Karen driving before. I could make out her silhouette through the glass, talking to someone in the passenger seat. Then 2 figures stepped out, carrying flashlights of their own. One of them kicked open my gate. That's when I turned on the floodlight. The yard lit up like daylight, and the look on Karen's face was priceless. Caught in the act, soaked from the rain, but still trying to act in control. "What are you doing on my property at midnight?" I shouted over the thunder. She held up her clipboard, pretending this was some official business. "We're conducting an HOA safety inspection." "You've been reported for harboring dangerous equipment." I almost laughed. "Dangerous equipment? You mean my toolbox?" Her friend stepped forward, a stocky guy with a camera. "We have the right to document all non-compliant items," I smirked. "Not here, you don't." When I raised my phone to start recording, Karen's mask finally cracked. "Turn that off," she barked. "You can't film me." "Oh, but I can," I said. "This is my land, remember?" And then, through the roar of the rain, I heard another engine. Different tone, heavier. A county patrol truck turned into the drive. My cousin stepped out again, this time wearing his full deputy uniform. He glanced at the scene, Karen, her men, flashlights in the rain, and sighed. "Ma'am, we've already warned you twice." "What's your excuse this time?" Karen stammered. I received a complaint." "From who?" he asked flatly. She froze. "Anonymous." He raised an eyebrow. "So yourself, then." Her face went red. "All right," he said, rubbing his temple. "This is the 3rd incident. You and your associates are trespassing. I'm going to have to ask you to leave before this becomes official." Her voice cracked with frustration. "You can't keep protecting him. He doesn't belong here." My cousin turned toward me, then back at her. "Karen, he owns half this lake. His deed predates your HOA by decades. You're standing on his land." For a long moment, no one moved. Rain dripped off her clipboard, her perfect curls collapsing under the storm. Finally, she hissed, "You'll regret this." "Already did," I said quietly. She turned, stomped back to her SUV, and peeled off down the road, tires spitting gravel. When the lights disappeared, my cousin sighed. "She's not gonna quit," I nodded. No, she's not. I looked back at the lake, dark, calm, silent again, and smiled faintly. But next time, I won't need to call you, because by morning, my plan would already be in motion. I'd spent the last week digging through the county archives, and I'd found something Karen definitely didn't want public. Her HOA's permit renewal had expired 2 years ago, and I knew exactly how to use that. The next morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds, spreading golden light across the lake. Everything looked calm again, but I knew peace was just the calm before the final storm. I printed the last page of the document I'd been working on all night. The official county report, signed and verified. The Lakeside HOA's charter had expired 26 months ago, meaning, legally, they didn't exist anymore, and that meant every warning, every fine, every threat Karen had thrown my way was worthless. By noon, I drove down to their precious clubhouse, the one sitting right on my land. Dozens of residents were gathered outside for their weekend meeting. Karen stood in front, clipboard in hand, giving one of her usual power speeches about community order. I waited until she paused to breathe. Then I walked straight up the steps and dropped a thick envelope on the table in front of her. "What's this supposed to be?" she snapped. "Eviction notice," I said simply. The crowd gasped. Karen laughed nervously. "You can't evict us. This is private HOA property." "Actually," I said, pulling out the old deed and the new county report, "it's my property, and your HOA doesn't legally exist anymore. You've been collecting fees and issuing fines on land that isn't even yours." Her face went pale as paper. "That's impossible." The county inspector I'd called stepped forward from the crowd, badge shining in the sunlight. "It's not impossible, Mrs. Thompson. We've confirmed it. You've been operating without a valid charter and built several structures on private property. That's a serious offense." The entire crowd turned on her at once, murmurs, gasps, questions flying everywhere. "You said everything was legal. You made us pay thousands." "Is this true?" Karen's voice cracked. "No, he's lying. This is a setup." But no one believed her anymore. The inspector handed me a copy of the final order. "Mr. Walker, as the rightful landowner, you have full authority over this area now. They'll need to vacate and clear any structures built past the old property line." I nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir." Karen just stood there, trembling, eyes wide. "You can't do this to me." I leaned closer. "Karen, you tried to evict me from my own land. You faked documents. You trespassed 3 times. This isn't me doing anything to you. This is just truth catching up." Her clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the ground. As the inspector and officers walked her to the car, the neighbors looked at me with a mix of guilt and relief. A few even came forward to shake my hand, thanking me for exposing her lies. I just looked out across the water. The same lake my grandfather once fished on, now glimmering under the sun. "Guess the lake's finally ours again," I said quietly. And as Karen's car disappeared down the dusty road for the last time, I couldn't help but smile. People always talk about fighting for their land, but sometimes justice isn't about fighting at all. It's about standing your ground, letting the truth speak louder than any threat. I took a deep breath, feeling the wind off the lake, free and calm again. "This is home," I whispered, "and no one's taking it from me ever again." She tried to evict me from my land, but in the end, I evicted her entire empire.